What is up, Chargers fans? Today we are going to look at sixth round pick Nick Niemann, the linebacker out of Iowa, a guy that was first brought to my attention by Steven as one of his dark horse candidates in the draft, and a guy that I eventually mocked to the Chargers in the sixth round of our final mock. And I mocked him to the Chargers for three reasons. One, his RAS score, which was great. And it reminded me a lot of guys like Easton Stick, but in particular Drew Tranquil, these guys that were taken on day three with some upside because of their athletic testing. And number two, the Chargers do need help at the linebacker position, not as a starter position, but they need some depth. They need some developmental guys, and they don't necessarily need a downhill thumper kind of linebacker. And I don't really think Niemann is that, but they do need someone who can develop, who is also really good in coverage. And I do think Niemann is that, but that's for a different video, sort of. We'll have some of that in here. And then finally, the Chargers need help on special teams because they were awful. If they weren't the worst special teams group in the league last year, I would be surprised. And so that does lead me to this video, specifically looking at how Niemann is going to contribute and be a great special teams player for the Chargers. Now, there were many problems on special teams, but there are three specifically when it comes to getting after the returner. One, that being horrific angles. Do you remember a Chargers player, getting to the returner as soon as they caught the football? It feels like that returner always had space to work with, or if that player got close, the returner would just go past them and they would miss that tackle, which is the second issue. Too many missed tackles. I feel like, since Drew Tranquil was hurt and probably wasn't going to have much of a special teams role, and with Derek Watt on a different team, Adrian Phillips, Nick Dzubnar on different teams, it just seemed like the Chargers were uncomfortable, if you will, getting down to make a tackle on the returner. Like, it just didn't seem natural for them. And so now they're having to go through all this stuff, this new cycle of special teamers to hopefully fix that. And I think Niemann can. And finally, another problem is that I think they had issues getting off their blockers, right? And while I don't have snaps of Niemann on special teams doing that, I do have some of him getting off. Oh, that's a little Drew Tranquil for you. I do have some of him getting off linemen, who are trying to block him and getting off them to make a tackle, which I think does translate eventually to his special teams role. So what you just saw was just one game and three of a handful of good returns by the Saints that game and poor coverage by the Chargers. So there's a whole lot we could get into about protections and the punt itself, but we'll just focus on the coverage. So now we go backwards to someone like Drew Tranquil, who I believe is here. Very blurry, I know. A guy who, runs down the field in his rookie season, opening game of the year, runs down the field in his lane, disengages with his blocker, and makes a sure tackle on the ball carrier, which I do have on repeat here. Now, obviously, that was what he's doing here was missing from that Saints game. But, the Saints game was punt returns versus kickoff return here. But I still think generally the idea applies, right? The Chargers don't really have that. So as I try to do with some of these, prospect breakdowns, I wanted to show a little character play first from the prospect. And this one, it's just a hustle play from Niemann, who's going to force the quarterback pressure. And it's not much, but he does fight through some low contact and he gets the quarterback to check it down. And to me, this just says that I can trust Niemann, to give me 100% and at least be in position to make a play on every return. So let's go back to those three problems I mentioned earlier. Let's start with the third one, getting off blocks. Now, granted, Niemann isn't some monster physically and won't blow up linemen, but he doesn't get stuck on them either. And on this first play here, he's responsible for anything coming through the B gap, splitting the two defenders in front of him. And the call ends up being a play action, and number 54, I believe here, gets great penetration. Now, Niemann's eyes are on the ball here. That's why I like using Adobe Premiere Pro better. Is the running back taking it, and is he coming straight at me? Is this quarterback going to keep it and go that way? As it turns out, the defensive back number 4 here, He crashes too hard here, on the option where he should be playing a little more inside and trying to close the space here. So with the defensive lineman getting great penetration, and the empty field to his right, this running back is going to end up cutting it back this way. And it's possible that call was intentional. The right side of the line certainly blocks, like they're trying to give him his backside. But either way, you are going to have a right guard on Niemann. And, no one on the backside who's ready to take, the running back out here. But Niemann keeps his eyes on the back, even with the contact here. Right? Even with that contact, he still got his eyes on the running back. He absorbs it, he sheds it, and he gets the ball carrier. Granted, he wasn't the first one, but I think the end result is basically the same. Same basic idea here. He's going to be in charge of watching the quarterback. Should he take off and run? I'm just showing you the play first before going from the end zone view. So yeah, with 31 on the running back here, he's responsible for this quarterback. Should he take off and run? And so he's free to watch his side of the field. And as soon as he notices this left guard here pulling to trying to get to the second level to block him, Niemann fills that empty space right here the best he can, engages again, absorbs, and pops off the left guard with great balance, by the way, and makes a tackle. There are better plays, like better tackles in a little bit, but I just think the way that he can take on physical contact, engage with it, absorb it, have great balance, and then still make a play on the ball, I think is pretty impressive. Granted, I don't know how good this offensive line is for, I want to say Nebraska, although we do know one of these players. And last play from this trait, same idea. He's initially responsible for making sure that nothing cuts back to his side as they all go this way. And initially it doesn't. So he's going to make sure nothing comes down this way. But, this is basically a busted play here. And as soon as this right guard is getting to the second level to block him, right guard, he's getting to the second level to block him. As soon as that right guard is about to engage with him, the running back goes, maybe I should go to the right. And so Niemann, once again, engages, gets off, and makes a good tackle here. So the next few plays specifically highlight his ability to come up and make tackles in the box, in some traffic, if you will. And, like I said, I wouldn't call him a downhill thumper, but he is a very sure tackler. And his missed tackle rate is actually second in the entire country among starting linebackers, ahead of guys like Nick Bolton, Chaz Surratt, etc. So I'll just let these plays run because they're pretty self-explanatory. But the main focus here is to focus on how locked in he is to always find a way to get to the ball carrier. And that solves, a bit of a problem. Or excuse me. Yeah, it does. It solves problem 1 and 2 that I mentioned earlier for the Chargers on special teams, which were angles and missed tackles. And I think he just has a knack for being a tackle magnet. Not just making the tackle, but always trying his best to come. Like I said, he's not a downhill thumper, but he is a downhill tackler, if you will. And then finally, somewhat related to both angles and tackling is the ability to function sideline to sideline. Now, Iowa sometimes would ask him to line up over the center and then race way out here to cover the flat. So they really trusted his athletic ability. He would line up in coverage and he'd be faking a blitz and then run all the way this way onto a tight end who runs like a quick out or something. So they really trusted what he could do athletically. And this is where his RAS score really comes into play because he can fly. And the next two plays are really good examples of that. So the first one here has the running back running out to the flat. And as soon as Niemann sees it, not only is he getting there, but you can see that he runs at a bit of an angle to close that gap as he covers that distance. It's the difference between 2nd and 5 and 2nd and 7. And in this particular case, he stops the back for a 3-yard gain on 2nd and 6, I believe. No, 2nd and 9. And a play you actually saw earlier with those tackles was the next play in this series where he forced a 4th down off a great tackle. And in this one, he's communicating behind him. And as soon as he turns back around, this play is going. Yet he still is able to recover, sprint, and make a really good tackle for a very short gain. And finally, one more play to wrap things up. He drops into coverage, and he probably should have passed off his man a little bit sooner. So the quarterback does take off. But even though the quarterback does, Niemann just has that legit sideline to sideline speed to get all the way back here and get that quarterback down. So, all in all, while there is definitely a role for Niemann on defense one day, and with the Chargers injury history, like he'll probably be on the he'll probably be there, but he will be an instant contributor on special teams. He's a sure tackler. I think he has I know he has fantastic athleticism. And shoot, he even has a brother, Ben Niemann, on the Chiefs, who was a special teams piece for them. So I love the fit. The need was there, and the value of the pick in the 6th round is really good. So I'm happy with this. I think most Chargers fans are at least, happy with this. Even if you wanted a safety, you totally get why they would take someone like Niemann, who's very sure and good at his job, who I think will contribute on special teams immediately. So that's it from me today. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you guys next time. Bolt up.